What's going on, Bigger Pockets family? It's Matt Faircloth. Welcome to the Real Estate Unscripted show. As I said, my name is Matt. My company is called the DeRosa Group, and we're a real estate company that's dedicated to all kinds of cool things like transforming lives through real estate and being a transparent real estate organization. And I am so grateful to have this show to share here with you guys, the Real Estate Unscripted show that my wife Liz and I like to come to every week on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. That is Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, where we get to bring on all kinds of cool guests like the Jay Scott, like Chad Gallagher from Slade House Group, like Chad Carson, Coach Carson comes on the show. And we've got plenty of others, including Ashley Wilson and whatnot. Hey, if you guys are watching, hi, Audrell. Give me a quick shout out, say hi, and tell me where you're from, okay? If you tell me where you're from with a geographical stamp, I'll give you guys a high five like that, okay? So let's do a few quick shout outs on geography. Again, mark your calendars, guys. Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern is this show every week. Either my wife or my lovely wife, Liz, or myself will be here with you guys. So be here Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern. A few things to throw out to you guys. Here's something y'all need to check out. If you guys like reading books are the ways to educate and expand your mind. Well, Bigger Pockets has a ton of great books, including Raising Private Capital. Great book, of course, right? Can't help but mention that. But along with Raising Private Capital, another book that Bigger Pockets produced is Anston Young's book on how to finding and funding great deals. Okay, so who wants great deals? If you guys want great deals in your real estate business, give me a thumbs up right now on Facebook, okay? Or a heart. I'll take your hearts too, okay? Whatever you got, give me that. Because if you haven't read Matt Anston Young's book yet, you need to, because it's about how to find and fund great deals. Now, I'll give you one better. Bigger Pockets has a book club that we're starting up here. Now, book clubs work like this. It's going to be like a group discussion of the book, and Anston Young's even going to be able to come talk to you guys for a bit if you read this book. So go pick up a copy of Anston Young's book. And if you guys are a pro annual or a premium annual member, you guys can get into the book club for free. So just join Pro Annual and Premium Annual, because that's worth the price of admission to get into the book club. And if you're not a Pro Annual, Yona, hang on for a second. I'm gonna get my man Yona Weiss a high five. There he is. Bow. What's up, brother? Oh, of course I jacked up my camera when I did that. Give me a second. Oh, there we go. Oh boy, glad I paid all that money for that camera. Okay. So let's see. Okay, where was I? All right, you guys get a free copy of the book if you guys join Bigger Pockets Pro Annual or Bigger Pockets Premium Annual and you set up for the book club. You will get a free, with a capital F, copy of the book. I got a link for you guys coming here. Nikki, if you can post the link. There it is, biggerpockets.com/virtual-book club. There it is. Go there, check it out. Be there or be square, guys. Anston Young's book is on there, and we're also got more books coming in the pipeline for the book club. So make sure you all check that out. Okay. Now, we've got lots of great guests coming for the Real Estate Unscripted show, but this guest is super interesting, and he has a crazy story, and he's someone who's done some of the most interesting investments I've heard of. So we're going to bring him on, and he's going to talk to us now. His name is Matt Picheny, and he's with MJP Investments. Guys, let's give a big, lots of thumbs up and lots of hearts on social media for Matt Picheny. Matt, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on with us. There he is. How are you?
Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you, man. Cool. So guys, Matt Picheny is sitting all the way up in Boston, Massachusetts. Matt, can you give a quick 30 seconds or less, tell our audience everything there is to know about you? Give us like a 30 second Matt Picheny summary real quick. And we'll take it right there for the interview. And by the way, audience, pop in your questions. Let your fingers do the walking. Type in questions for Matt, because this is unlike a podcast where you got to just sit and listen to a one-way street. This is a two-way street, y'all. You can sit and pick Matt's brain and my brain, both Matt's, Matt and Stereo. Pick both our brains today, and we'll answer your questions. Whatever y'all want to get into, we will talk to you guys about. So type your questions in, type in where you're from too, and I'll give you guys shout outs as well. Now, Matt, 30 seconds or more, whatever you need. Tell us all about yourself.
I'll try to do it quickly. I grew up in Florida, Orlando, Florida, and I moved to New York to pursue a career in theater, and I went to a musical theater conservatory, graduated from there, and I was a professional actor for 5 years. Then I started tinkering around with computers. This is big in the big heyday for, the big .com craze that was going on. And I started doing a lot of work in digital media. I had my own boutique agency doing that for about 5 years. And then the dot-com bubble burst. And right around that time, we also had 9/11 and Showtime, which was the cable television channel, was a client of mine. They offered me a position to come on in-house and work there. So I did, and that started my career sort of in the corporate world, if you will. And I worked first at Showtime, and then I started working at some advertising agencies and was working in that digital advertising media world for 18 years professionally, climbing the corporate ladder. During the last 10 years of that 18-year career, I started doing some real estate things on the side as a hobby. It had originally started off, but prior to those 10 years when I had bought my first primary residence in New York, and then I sold it about 2 years later and quadrupled my equity investment in the deal. And it was like, light bulb, right? So then I started getting involved in real estate as a hobby. So I did real estate as a hobby for 10 years. During that time, I met my wife. My wife works in the theater business as well. She is on the business side of things. She's not a performer, but she's on the business side. And we started investing in some Broadway shows and investing in some real estate. And a little over 5 years ago, she got approached out of the blue with a really cool job opportunity for her, which had us move down to Miami. And during that time, I transitioned into doing real estate full-time. Mm-hmm. And then fast forward a couple of years later, she got recruited once again out of the blue. She's really good and a lot of demand.
Sounds like you married up.
I did. I definitely did.
Congratulations to you, brother.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
And so she got recruited for a really cool job opportunity in Boston. So we've been in Boston for over 3 years now. And so I spend my time full-time doing real estate. She spends her time full-time working as the general manager of a large theater here in Boston, and part of a larger global company, and has some other roles within that organization. And on the side, we like to invest in theatrical endeavors, Broadway shows. So we've invested in quite a few shows, and we actually even have some co-producer credits for a couple of shows that have been on Broadway, and one that will be returning hopefully soon, as soon as the pandemic is over.
Yeah. What are some names? There's a lot to unpack there. Thank you for all that.
Sure.
It helps me in the audience get to know you a little bit. What are some shows that we might have heard of that you've invested in the past?
Right. So from a strictly investment perspective, we've invested in some shows that, unless your audience I'll just tell you what they are, because who knows who's out there. If you're a big theater fan, you may know. We've invested in a show called If Then, which starred Idina Menzel, right at the time when Frozen was really big. We also invested in a little show that most of your people probably haven't heard of, but it's called Hamilton. So we did that one. And
congrats. I can say right there, if you were invested in Hamilton, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, we saw that show downtown at the Public Theater before it moved up to Broadway. We saw it because my wife is really good friends with one of the lead producers on the show. So we went down to sort of support her, and we had heard good things about the show. We were blown away by the show. We thought it was fantastic. I'd be lying if I told you that in my wildest dreams, that I thought it would become the sort of cultural phenomenon that it has become. We loved it. We were blown away by the show, but sometimes there's shows that are really good, and for certain reasons, whatever, it just doesn't get picked up. It just doesn't get that sort of notoriety.
So many seats. Yeah, right. There's only, it's one of those things you gotta be really talented and be lucky too, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, okay. How do you feel about Hamilton being on Disney Plus? Is that a good thing, bad thing? Is that
Well, we're going to find out, right? So, we will know eventually, because what has happened is, it was going to be on Disney Plus. But I think that the plan was that it wouldn't be going for about another year or so. And then the pandemic happened. And so they moved it up earlier. And so, the real question is that going to hurt ticket sales? And we don't really know the answer to that yet because the show hasn't been running right now on Broadway, so there are no ticket sales. So we'll find out. But, I think what it's doing is, look, the show's been running on Broadway for over 5 years. And not only Broadway, there's, I believe, 3 US tours of the show. It's running in the UK. It's about to open up in Australia. So there's all these different companies of the show going on. There's been a lot of exposure and a lot of people have already seen the show. But I think that putting it on Disney Plus is getting that message out to a wider audience, which I think is great. And it's getting it to some people who would never make a trip to New York or even to their local theater to necessarily see it if it's like on tour. So I think the exposure of that show, I think it's got a really fantastic message. There's lots of messages in there, but some of them are really profound. One of them actually is what propelled me to even go into real estate full time. I'm writing a book about my journey in real estate, and it's right in there. It's like sort of one of the chapters.
It's inspired by Hamilton.
To a certain extent, yeah.
Right.
To go out there and take my shot, right? So, I was sitting there. Should I do this to go ahead and transition into doing real estate full time? And then I'm listening to the cast recording of Hamilton just because I love it, and I hear these people say, take your shot, don't throw away your shot. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to take my shot. I'm going to go for it.
Right.
So. It's a really inspiring story, and we have a multiracial cast in that show, which is fantastic. Unbelievable performers. So I think that opening up to a wider audience, to people who wouldn't normally get exposed to it, is great. But I also think some people will see it who maybe weren't going to go to Broadway, and maybe they're thinking of Broadway as like that kind of old school Rodgers and Hammerstein, which is great, and I appreciate that. But it's so relevant to today, what Hamilton is. It's very contemporary, and maybe people will see it on Disney Plus and say, you know what, I want to go see that live. There's
I would be that guy. I will likely watch it when I get around to it. I'll watch it on Disney Plus, and if I like it when it comes live on Broadway again, I will do that. I will likely watch it there. So what's up, Jerry Mills? Haven't heard from you in a while. One of my fans, Jerry Mills. What's up, brother? High five. So that's awesome. Okay, so Hamilton. My wife and I loved the Broadway show called All Shook Up, and they took it off. It was all, but they took it down. It was all Elvis's shows, and I thought it was a great musical, and I thought it was phenomenal. But I just the storyline itself kind of sucked, but the music was great, and the performance, the way they wove the music into the story was great. But the story itself, it was, But I enjoyed it.
They see how well the show was selling. All Shook Up, if I remember correctly, I wasn't ever involved in it, but it did pretty well. I think it got some awards, and I think it got some good notoriety, and I think it ran for a couple of years. Which is, that's the thing about Broadway, is that, like, investing in Broadway, we realize how risky it is, and so a lot of shows, you're lucky if you even break even. So Hamilton was like amazing, right? We've been involved in some other shows recently. We're in Moulin Rouge, which is running on Broadway. It's currently nominated for 14 Tony Awards, so we'll see what happens when the Tony Awards happen. We were involved in David Byrne's American Utopia, which was phenomenal, and that was last season. And it was shot, actually, Spike Lee came and saw the show, loved it, and filmed it. And it's on HBO. You can check it out on HBO. It's one of the best. Like, when you see Hamilton, and I'm not knocking it because it's great on Disney Plus, but it does look very much to me like, okay, there's a camera inside a Broadway theater filming a live performance, which is cool. What Spike Lee did with American Utopia, although there are some scenes where you see the crowd, it looks like it was shot as a movie. I mean, the cinematography on it is fantastic, and I highly recommend it.
That's what I feel like the part of it you would miss is it is the feeling of you don't want to just make it feel like you're just a camera sitting on watching a play on stage, Well, that's
and
so.
Hamilton, I'm not knocking on the Hamilton. They have the cameras with the crane swooping through, and they have made it more interactive. But just Spike Lee kind of took it to a whole nother level.
It's Spike, he's an incredible director, incredible producer. Okay, so Broadway show investing. This is it not a ROI IRR. I mean, I suppose you could tell me, hey Matt, my ROI on Hamilton so far has been X, but that doesn't necessarily matter because Hamilton's kind of like catching lightning in a bottle. To me, this kind of sounds like, and I get you and your wife do tons of research. She's in the industry, so she probably knows a good show from a bad show in that. But for us, as the on the outside looking in, I have a friend, he's Jay Scott, who runs the business podcast. Talks a lot about, he owns a lot of horses. He owns racehorses, right? And it sounds similar to racehorsing for what you've got going on, right? Because racehorses are like, you either get a horse, then it goes and runs and does well, or turns into glue, and it doesn't do well. Broadway shows like that where it's either absolute like 1000x on your money or like maybe flops and doesn't make anything. Is there an in-between space, or is it kind of one or the other?
I think there is an in-between space, but I think it's it's like a barbell investing type thing, right? When you look, and I don't know the exact stats, but I would say 90% of Broadway shows are financial failures. Okay. A large, vast amount of them are failures. So, but if you do get one that knocks it out of the park, like a Hamilton or Wicked or Phantom of the Opera.
I've seen Wicked 4 times on stage.
Yeah, exactly.
I love Wicked.
I mean, it's that kind of thing where, and it's just been running forever, and there's been different tours of it, and it's been in different countries, and with Hamilton, once Broadway and everything gets back up and running, we'll have 7 different companies of Hamilton running. So like, you invest in the original Broadway company, in the originating production, which is usually Broadway, sometimes it's in London. But if you're in that originating company, you automatically get, and what I'm saying is in 99% of deals, the deals can be written differently, but in the vast majority of them, you invest in that Broadway originating company, you get right of first refusal to invest the same pro rata investment, like same percentage of any subsequent companies. They're capitalized individually, but like with Hamilton,
you got to keep ponying up. You got to keep writing checks. Yeah.
Right. But we just kept rolling over our profits from Hamilton Broadway into every other Hamilton that opened up. And then the next thing you know, we have 7 different distribution checks coming in.
You got all these revenue streams.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been fantastic. So that is definitely an anomaly, right? It is not the way. And I tell that to people, we've been involved in American Utopia, as I mentioned, which had a fantastic return on investment. It's funny. All my real estate guys who do this, we've been very lucky lately. We've had many busts in the past, but in the past 7 years or so, we haven't had any busts. And so it's like, my real estate people kind of freak out at the returns because they're phenomenal. But with Moulin Rouge, which we have going on right now, they are going to be launching, relaunching it on Broadway. There'll be a US tour. It's going to be opening in Australia, and it's going to be opening in London. So there's going to be 4 companies of that show that are going to be running, and hopefully there'll be good attendance. It's an awesome show. It's really, really fun. If you've seen the movie, it gives you a little bit of a glimpse, but the movie was many years ago, right? With Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor. And what they did, the creative team actually updated the catalog. So if you remember from the movie, it was a mashup, and they had different songs from like Madonna and Nirvana. Yeah. Well, now it's got like, Beyonce and Katy Perry, and they've updated a lot. There's still some of the good old Elton John, Your Song is in there. There's still some of those classics from the movie that you still want to be in there, but they've also updated it. And so it's super cool, really fun, very energetic. Like
that's going to be the next big thing.
I mean, it got nominated for 14 Tonys, so we're really thinking so. And there was just a huge spread in the New York Times on Sunday, so you could check it out online, talking about it and actually talking about what has happened with the pandemic, and through the eyes of the creative team and the actors and what's been happening. Because when it was launched, when it was running, it was doing really well. It was the number 2 selling show, only number 2 to Hamilton on Broadway.
Well, let's talk about pandemic, right? And because it's like that's one thing that I think is interesting in that I live like an hour away from New York, right? So we used to go up all the time for shows and stuff like that. And I married an Italian Jersey girl with parents from Brooklyn. So we knew all about Broadway growing up. She's walking around singing Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat songs and stuff like that. So my father-in-law saw Donny Osmond on stage as Joseph, right? Cool. So anyway, at the end of the day, Broadway could have gone one direction with COVID, and because it could have gone more commercialized. Okay, we're just going to sell Wicked to HBO, or we're going to take Avenue Q and put it on Netflix, right? But and then maybe that's a bad example of that. But like they decided not to go wide with COVID. They decided to say that, well, I mean, maybe there's other troops, other things like that are happening. But Hamilton's the one show that I've seen, and it's like the biggest show, right? So it's on Disney Plus. But I think I commend the actors for defending their trade. And for not like commercializing it and watering it down and making it a wider thing that now that, most Broadway studios are shuttered right now, waiting on COVID to be over. Correct?
Well, yeah. So here's what I would say about that was that the Hamilton thing was already planned and already filmed, right?
Right.
So it's not like the pandemic happened and then they filmed it. It had already been filmed.
They already had the reel.
It was all ready to go. You have to make negotiations with the producers, with the actors, with the actors union. So that was already done. It was already filmed. It was in the can, so to speak. And the same thing with American Utopia. I mean, American Utopia just came out in October, so well into the pandemic, but they had just shot it, I think in December or January. Was when it had been shot of 2019 into 2020 when it was running on Broadway. So these things had already been filmed, and that's why they were able to then release them. Where Wicked, there was no plan to film it. Broadway got hit very quickly, as so did most of the country, right? Where all of a sudden it was like March 12th. Hey, guess what? Like for us, I was at the theater with my older daughter. I mean, she's not that old. She's 6 years old, but we love watching MasterChef. Okay. We watched MasterChef Junior together, and my wife's theater happened to have the tour of MasterChef Junior at her theater. So we're at her theater, watching the show. And, my wife comes up to me at intermission. She said, "Did you get my text?" I was like, "No, my phone was off." And I opened up my phone, and there it was: school's canceled for tomorrow. And that was it, right? So
only a week or two. We'll only be closed for a week or so, right?
Yeah. In the New York Times article with Moulin Rouge, one of the actors is talking about the fact that what happened was one of the leads got sick. Actually, it turned out 25 different members of Moulin Rouge, I believe it's 25 cast members, might be 26, actually contracted COVID, but they didn't know it at the time, right? Because it was just coming out.
Right.
And March 12th, the guy who plays the Duke, he was very sick. And because of that, and so many other people had been sick with the flu, they ended up canceling, and because COVID was becoming a thing, they canceled the shows for that night. I don't know if there was a matinee performance. It might've been a Wednesday and there was a matinee, or maybe it was a Thursday, but whatever. They canceled the performance, and later that night, like all of Broadway was like made an announcement, like, we're closed, like COVID is here, we're done. And that was when, my daughter's school here in Boston was like, we're done, like everything shut down, I think right around March 12th or in a lot of places. So it just kind of hit everybody.
Now what? Now what for Broadway, right? And I know at some point we're going to talk real estate, but
you gotta read this article to see what's going on with people. But like, it's horrible for all the tradespeople involved in theater. So when you look at your actors, when you look at your the people who are working on the creative teams, right? The people who work on the sets and the costumes and your stagehands and all of this. I mean, this is devastating for them. So they're all trying to find other avenues with which to generate an income, right? It's not like, it's like for same people who work in restaurants and bars and things like that. When those restaurants are closed or those bars are closed, any sort of like service industry is closed, hospitality, all the people who work in hospitality. Now, all of those things have been able to open up a little bit, depending on what state you're in and how bad the virus is affecting it. But theater basically is just shut down everywhere, right? There's just no opportunity. Now, from a producer's perspective, from an investor's perspective, I can tell you that we've been very involved in trying to do things to help those people, there's an organization called Broadway Cares, and me and my wife personally,
I've heard
donated.
that advertised at shows.
Yeah,
that was around before COVID.
They've been around before COVID, correct? But they have been doing things during a time of COVID. There was an online show, and then there was something for the Actors Fund that was just done recently. But philanthropically, I'm trying to do things to help people. But I'll tell you, from an investment in the show's perspective, we're gonna be okay. And it's like there's a pause, which really is not great. We do also have business continuity insurance, which has sort of helped us out a little bit because there's a lot of costs with shutting everything down, and we paid people for a certain amount of time, even though there was no income coming in, and we're going to have costs to start all the production back up, and we still have to pay rent on those Broadway houses. The way that it works with the Broadway houses is there's a minimum rent. Most of what it is a percentage of the ticket sales, but there is a minimum rent. So, we have to pay the minimum rent or try to work negotiations out with those landlords, but those landlords still have mortgages. I guess
they got their own overhead, right? We all got those things.
Property taxes and, all like New York City property tax. I don't even want to know what property tax looks like in Times Square. Like, that's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Just a question. Why do you feel like more of those shows have not gone like, pay-per-view or like online subscriptions
because what are they going to do? Like if they haven't filmed it already, you can't film it now. You can't have 12 actors on stage, even if that's be a small cast, 12 actors singing to one another in a day of COVID. Like they're going to get each other sick.
Look at like SNL. Somehow or another, they're able to do it, right? SNL still filming.
I don't know how they do it. My wife.
I think they're getting tested.
They quarantine and they test.
But I think for
a Broadway show, it doesn't make sense. Like for SNL, that's what they're doing. But for a Broadway show, I feel like if it's already in the can, that's one thing. But to bring everybody into a theater, there's also like rules around. So I don't know how many people are in SNL but besides just the cast, with the crew and everything like that. But there are rules about not having more than 25 people congregate at any time, regardless of what's going on. Maybe SNL is being shot. I have no idea.
They're able to do something because they got like a lot. I watched SNL every here and again, and when I watched it, I'm like, how are they pulling this off? Because they got people sitting right next to each other. They got a live audience. You know what I mean, like that. I think they must be testing like every half an hour.
I don't know that they have a full live audience because the only thing you ever see is those few chairs in the front. I went to SNL when I lived in New York. I'm a huge SNL fan, like since I was a little kid, and I was shocked at how small the studio. I mean, it's tiny. Yeah. So
I've heard that.
I don't know.
You're right, and I don't want to compare Broadway to SNL because it's not. They're both lovely, but they're not the same thing, right? But I guess I was just saying, where there's a will, there's a way. But at the end of the day, listen, I'll be grateful when Broadway comes back. And that I get a few other things to unpack here. I'd love to know acting gigs you did when you were a pro actor. I know Bigger Pockets founder Josh Dorkin was an SNL extra and a pro actor originally. Oh, wow. When he first got started, I've seen some sketches with him in them and things like that. So he was SNL back in the day as well. Real quick, any pro actor things we would recognize or things you want to pound your chest on while you're a pro actor?
No. So I was really primarily a theater actor.
Too quick.
And I performed in every major city in the continental U.S. During those 5 years, I was in 15 professional productions, ranging from regional theater to off Broadway. I did shows you would have heard of, but unless you were in a particular town where I was doing one of those, and I was in cool shows. I mean, I was in the Fantastics. I was in Tommy. That was my favorite role ever. But I wasn't like the lead in Tommy on Broadway, right? Which is where people might know you from. And I didn't really do any film or TV, although I was in a music video once, covered from head to toe in red stocking.
God.
Yeah.
You know what? It's one of those things as an actor. Sometimes you got to just go get the check, and that could mean, hey, I need you to, right.
Yeah. Right. And I was like, an MTV music video, I'll do that. Yeah, it was fun.
Fine. Why not? Right. So you've been, again, that's a lot of exposure through your passion.
Sure.
And that's one of these things is that what I see, what I hear is that you've been able to do some passive investing in line with your passion, which is very cool. Because not everybody gets to do that. A lot of times people are investing in real estate or whatever for the vehicle of real estate. I tend to I do love real estate. And so I don't mind it and I enjoy it, but not everybody does because a lot of people are just investing for the why of it. But what I hear about Broadway is that you're able to invest in things, the why, but also because you have a passion for it, which I think is really cool. So that's like a footnote to take back to you, Bigger Pockets audience, about if you're able to invest and make money in things that you're passionate about, like Matt did here. And there's a lot to be said for that, because Matt, I would be willing to guess that obviously you're able to vet out a good investment, just based on the merits and things like that on the Broadway side. But because you and your wife are passionate about it, you guys are in the space, it's probably a joy to vet these things and that, but also you probably have a better nose for it than somebody like myself would because of your knowledge and your passion for the space. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, and the thing that's really interesting is there's so many different parallels between the Broadway investments and multifamily syndication, which is what I do during my, for my day job, if you will.
I need to hear what those things are. Tell me more about how you correlate Broadway investments to real estate syndications, real estate investing, and the real estate work that you're doing now. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, it's funny because I never really thought about it until I started talking with other real estate investors about it. And I was like, hey, you know what? That's kind of like this and that's kind of like that. As an example, there's a company manager that's involved in a Broadway production. And so who's the company manager and the management company behind it, and how does that work? Well, that's like your property manager.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have your producers. What's a producer? That's like the sponsors of your deal, right? So you got your sponsors as your producers. You have investors, limited partners in both cases. The thing that's really interesting is that most Broadway shows are set up just like a real estate syndication. It's a 506C, right? It's a Reg D 506C offering, right?
Yeah.
So accredited investors only. And, so it's there's a PPM and an operating agreement, a subscription agreement. I mean, it's all very, very similar. Then we have they create what's called a recoupment schedule. Okay. The recoupment schedule is like your pro forma. Okay. It tells you how many tickets you need to sell at what ticket price and how many people need to come. So a recoupment schedule it'll break it down by sort of certain percentages based on a certain ATP, which is your average ticket price. So it'll show like 75%, 80%, 85%. So, maybe your show has to be 85% for a year to break even. I'm just making that up, right? It really varies widely depending on the show. But that 85%, that's like it's basically your economic occupancy, right? So it's not your occupancy, because the deal, that 85%, that's based on that average ticket price. But what if you have a discount tickets going on, or
you gotta buy the TKTS twofers, man. Right. That's where I get my tickets, right? Yeah.
So that factors all of that kind of into it. So if your occupancy is 100%, or in Broadway, sometimes you could be standing room only, right? Or it's that economic occupancy. You could be at 110%. You could be selling premium tickets and things of that nature. There's dynamic pricing involved. So all of that is just very similar. It's like your rental pricing, your occupancy on a real estate deal. So there's so many different parallels that can be drawn between the two. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Very, very similar.
Yeah, and you've got move-in specials and things like that, and all. Yeah, and all that same things happen on the real estate side. Okay, I got it. So tell me, by the way, are you able to drive? So that's how you push revenue. Is that, we're going to do some more marketing, or we could maybe drop the price a little bit to the TKTS thing, whatever. On the Broadway side, again, being a syndicator, as you know, NOI is created two different ways, either by dropping expenses or by increasing revenue, right? And that not people have kind of forgotten about the dropping expense side in real estate, because it's been so easy to create revenue the last couple of years. But that'll become more of an art as we move forward post-COVID in real estate. Is dropping expenses something that's easily done on Broadway, or do you need to focus mostly on the revenue side to create money in your business?
Well, you want to make sure that what you're doing is being done efficiently. But when you look at Moulin Rouge, I think that article said it was like a $28 million capitalization for the show, because you go to you go to see Moulin Rouge, you're going to get blown away by this amazing set, these like ridiculous costumes. There's so many different people on stage. Like it's almost overwhelming to the senses, like in a good way, right? So if you lose those production values, yeah, I mean, could they have done it on $5 million budget? Yeah, maybe, but you'd have to cut a lot of the
Right.
and the royalty for the good songs, and so you'd have to dumb it down.
And you wouldn't get your ticket price. You wouldn't get your ticket sales, because people are like, they're mediocre outfits. It looks like they got them at TJ Maxx, and it looks like they got the set from IKEA and stuff like that. So I get that this isn't a high school play. This is Broadway,
The thing that they do, which is interesting, is when they're making the show ready to go out on tour, they spend a lot of time and effort trying to figure out how can they make this look as great, big and grand as it does on Broadway. But the biggest thing is trying to get that set and the costumes and everything into the least amount of trucks. Because they have to have these trucks and drive them across country. So if you have to have 10 trucks, if you can narrow it down to 8 trucks or 6 trucks, you can save a lot in there. And then
that's not drivers and gasoline and all that, and fuel and
Once the show does well on Broadway, then it really becomes an exercise of how do we still keep these very high production values, which is super important, but then bring it down. Even Phantom of the Opera now is still out on tour, and I don't know what iteration of the tour it is now, but they've gotten to a point now where there's this big staircase scene that usually happens, where now their staircase has been removed because they keep, trying to make it, because it's been running on tour for such a long time, and maybe ticket prices aren't as high. I don't know. I don't know the economics behind it. But
they take away the organ. The guy's got a keyboard now, right?
Right.
Like a Casio, right?
So yeah.
Right. Because it's still Phantom, right? People still see it. So that's interesting. Okay, so real estate now. Are you investing in your own back? You've lived in Miami. Have you like developed a smattering of properties around your homesteads, or are you investing in more regional or more offsite stuff?
Yeah, more regional. I think Robert Helms, at least that's the guy who I've heard say it, right, from the real estate guys, says live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. The numbers didn't make sense in Miami. They certainly don't make sense in Boston, although Boston is a fantastic place for real estate investment if you're looking for a preservation of capital perspective. But in terms of growth, a lot of the properties, and believe me, I look at them all the time, they just don't cash flow. Okay. So I'm a cash flow guy. I really want high cash flow. That way I know I can live through, different parts of the market cycle. We know things are going to go up and they're going to go down. As long as I can cash flow through that whole period, I'm in good shape. And I have concerns about trying to do something like that in Boston. So most of my investments are, in the South, in the Mid-South, in those types of areas. I have a very large portfolio of doors that I've invested in, like over 6,000, but 75% of that are deals that I'm a limited partner in. I'm a passive investor in, and that's something that I have a whole system that I am executing, a business plan for that, and I also syndicate my own deals. So that's the other 25% of my portfolio. And so the deals that I'm a general partner in are located. I have in Houston, Dallas, and Kansas City.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have you learned as an LP? That because not everybody watching has done LP stuff. I've done some LP stuff, and we're mostly syndicators too. What have you learned as an LP investor that you brought into your GP side of your business, and also the folks that are watching this that perhaps want to either become or already are looking to syndicate deals? And what are some lessons that LPs picked up that you've been able to carry forward?
I mean, I don't know it. I don't even know how to answer that, Matt, because for me, I always wanted to be a general partner, but I started off as a limited partner investing in deals. So I had really sort of 2 goals in investing as a limited partner. One goal was to generate cash flow, right?
Yeah.
But the second goal was to learn from those syndicators. And so I made it very clear with all the syndicators that I was investing in, hey, I'm investing in your deal, not just because I like your deal, not just because I like you and you seem to be a good person, but because I want to learn from you and I want to learn from the syndication. And I want to make sure that it's going to be okay with you if I were to reach out to you from time to time, and I'm not going to be obnoxious about it. But time to time, if I have questions, if I have things that I want to learn. So I've been doing that for over 5 years now. So to try to distill it down to like a couple of things, it's almost like everything, right?
Yeah. Right,
I mean, I joined a mentorship group. I got education that way. I even took classes and did some certificate courses, got certificates at Boston University. And I've been with different mentors, and I'm in masterminds and all those other kinds of things, which are all fantastic. But I also learned a lot from being an LP and just kind of sitting back and watching. Most of the deals that I invest in are deals where those sponsors are sending out monthly reports. So, we're getting the financials, but we're really getting a nice little narrative in the body of that email telling us what happened, what went wrong, what went right. And so just through those experiences of sort of being in it, almost through osmosis, I learned a lot. And then when I've had questions, listen, I used to run very large P&Ls for big companies in New York City, right? I worked in these big advertising agencies. We had our clients were like Verizon and Coca-Cola and Visa. So I'd be in charge of like a $30 million P&L. That's not even including the media spend. That was just our fee, right, from an agency perspective. And I was in charge of reporting on all of that and keeping track of all of that. And so I know how to look at a P&L. But then when I go and look at a P&L on a real estate deal, there's all these different things. Like I didn't know what half of the stuff was on there. So I sat down the first time I invested in the deal, and I sat down with that sponsor a few months in and was like, hey, can we go through this P&L? Can you explain to me like line by line? Like I know what half of it is, but I don't know the other half. And that's how I started to learn things and started to learn how to, look at it through that real estate lens. So I kind of knew how to look at financials, but not through the real estate lens.
Yeah, that's something that is a muscle, because it's a real estate P&L is different than any other P&L, and real estate, ROI and performances. And I'd mentioned before about there's no way I would buy into a real estate deal that's like, hey, there's like a 10% chance this thing's going to make money. But if it makes money, it's going to wash out and smack it to the park. Most people invest in real estate for the normalization of cash flow, meaning like I can pretty much predict that if the economy's well and my tenants, and if I pick the right tenant, I'm going to make $300 per door per month, period, for the foreseeable future. Hard to say that on a Broadway investment. It's like, hey, we just throw money down a hole and we sure had fun with that. It was a great show, but we could also invest in this thing that could just, blow up and become the next Hamilton, right?
Right. So whenever we have people coming in with us as investors on any of the Broadway shows, number one, we make sure they're accredited. Number two, we make sure they realize that it's ridiculously risky. It's kind of got that risk reward factor there. Like the reward can be super high, but the odds of that happening are slim to none. So, you've got to be interested in theater and have a little bit of a passion for the theater first off, and then be willing to take on that risk and make sure that it's going to be money that you do not need. Like you don't need that money. And if you lose all of it, you're perfectly fine with that. And I've told that to some people, and sometimes it's not the right thing for the person. The person's like, no, it's just not right for me. And that's great. Because I just don't want anyone to be upset if a Broadway, here's the thing. And I say this to most people, I think the odds of a real estate investment going to zero are very unlikely. Okay. You can easily lose money in real estate, right? Very easily lose money. But that building should still retain some sort of value. And even if the building was obliterated somehow, right? It disappeared, you still have the land, right? That should have some sort of value to it, right? Now, if there's a nuclear bomb that goes off, well, then the land's no good, and then you're down to zero. But the odds of a real estate investment going to zero, I think, are not very high. The odds of a Broadway show going to zero, where you lose everything, is very, very possible. It's never happened to me. The most I've lost is 25%, which still sucks, right? Is not a happy thing. My wife's first investment, she invested in a play. it went down to zero. I mean, they just, all of it was gone.
Busted. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that was like 15 years ago, but
that's investing, right? So, okay. Well, as we're winding up, what's next for MJP Investments and for Matt Picheny? What's like on the horizon for you and your company? It seems like you're passionate about the Broadway thing, so I guess as things start opening back up, maybe more Broadway stuff. But what else is it that we should look out for you in your company moving into?
The thing I would say about the Broadway thing really quick is just that, we take our time with that. We did Hamilton, then we didn't do anything for 3 years before we got into Moulin Rouge because of the risk involved. And I didn't go into it, but we have a whole sort of system that we use to evaluate those deals and decide if we want to get involved. So maybe there'll be another Broadway show, maybe soon, maybe not. We'll have to see what happens. But for me, my business is focused on growing the real estate holdings that we have. And my big focus for this year is a book that I have that'll be coming out in the second, probably around halfway through the year. I don't know, Matt, this is my first time through the process. I know you've been with your book, but we're editing. We're in the editing. We just started the editing process. So you have to edit it, and then
edit again, and edit again. So and hire good proofreaders, because this book was proofread a bunch of times, and we got most of them out, most of the errors out, but there's still typographical errors that I made when I wrote it that are in that book right now, and all that. So but it's okay. It's a labor of love. Is the book? Have you written the book already? Done?
Yeah, the book's done. We literally just started editing it this week. So
what's it about?
I think it's about my journey in real estate, right? So it's a narrative story. I didn't want to put out, there's so many books out there about real estate. I really wanted mine unique, and I have a really unique story with the theatrical background and working in advertising. So I tell my story of what's happened to me, and through that story, I bring out these different keystone concepts which investors will be able to use, whether they're passive or not, or active. And as the book progresses, the details get more and more complex. And then at the end, there's kind of like a little guide there on how to evaluate deals from a passive perspective. Yeah. So that's the book. I'm really excited about it. So we're gonna be putting that out, and hopefully maybe halfway through the year, maybe a little after.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Great. Yeah. Well, good luck with that. And that's going to be phenomenal, I think. And it'd be like, it sounds like a nice personal touch on it and everything like that. So, all right. So, Matt, how do if folks want to hear, if they want to pick your brain on Broadway, or they want to hear more about syndications, or just pick your brain in general, or they want to get an advanced copy of your book, how do folks get a hold of you if they'd like to reach out to you after this interview?
Yeah, and we're launching a whole little book team there and getting some people involved in the editing process literally this week. So yeah, you could just go onto my website. It's mjpinv.com, or you can just email me directly. Just contact me through there. There's a contact form on that page, but it's mjpinv.com. It's MJP Investments. We're rebranding. I used to be called MJP Property Group. So if you go onto the website, you see the Property Group logo. It's just because the new logo is not ready yet, but it will be soon.
On the way, right?
It's on the way. And I love talking with people about real estate, whether you're a complete newbie or you're someone like Matt Faircloth, who's very prolific in the business and got a lot of deals. Just reach out.
Cool. Thank you. Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I love hearing about different kinds of investing and that. So I appreciate you coming to share that. And it's not that I think real estate's better or worse. It's just different as compared to other things. It's different compared to oil and gas. It's different compared to paper stock investments. It's different compared, and buddies that I know that have a lot of stock that are bragging about how their portfolio is up 30-40% in the last couple of years, that bought right and everything like that. It's like, oh, geez, that sounds good. Real estate's never going to do that. But as you said, real estate's also likely not going to take a nosedive as stock can either. So it's just good to diversify, guys, and to hear about other investments that are out there. Yes, there's real estate, but there's also many, many other investment vehicles, which we can hear about on things like the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast, and also this program, Real Estate Unscripted. And that. Stick around for next week's show, guys. I've got a great guest lined up there too. And my wife Liz will be on the third Thursday of every month. She'll be third Monday of every month. She'll be here. Yeah, one of those days. Anything that ends in a day, she'll be here. Anyway, Monday she'll be here. Third Monday for her side of the Real Estate Unscripted show. Matt Picheny, MJP Investments, MJPINV.com. Check Matt out.
Yep.
That's what I got for you today, Bigger Pockets family. I think I need some more water. I don't know. It's a pleasure having you here, Matt, and a pleasure having you guys watch. Make sure you join me next week on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. See you then.